never in my life heard of third degree murder. I didn't even know what that was. I had to look that up. I mean, I heard first and second, but of course now they've changed that. I think to second degree murder, and
Right.
and something about the way that the system is in Minnesota, that the other two who are, or the three who are aiding and abetting, should the one that's getting, I think, carries the second degree murder carries like a 40-year sentence, but should he be convicted of that, they too, then all the other three will get the same sentence. They get the same time. So that's interesting. But just, just from your perspective, I mean, what do you see? What's going on? What is this, more the same or something? Is there anything different?
First of all, let me say, all of you, your presentations, we're continuously learning. Man, Beezy just gave us a wonderful insight on and understanding up front and close to the protests and people that they see, and the feelings and the direction and the confusion, and the planning for coming out of this. The fact that you have young people already thinking about the aftermath beyond police officers being charged, beyond maybe convictions, but then what changes the culture that have existed for over 400 years. Because the reality of the matter is, no matter what's going on with these protests, and I've been saying this on a number of media outlets around the country, I think it's all in, if you understand history, you can anticipate it. In other words, the looting, the breaking glass and all, that's been a part of every protest from around the world. If you look at, in fact, the Central Intelligence Agency actually instigated that in Iran to overthrow the government there. They actually put people in to actually do that. If you look at protests in Hong Kong, if you look at protests in London, anywhere over the world where there have been protests, there have been the other things. So I think we have to understand that while we don't necessarily agree with it and like it, once things are out of order, once the agencies charged with law and order, that's what police are charged with, are out of order, then everything else is out of order. And you can't have an expectation of an orderly protest when the people who are doing law and order are. Once you are out of order, you're out of order. So the message behind that is, as difficult as it is to see the looting and the glass breaking and all, if you stop this at the origin, if you change the culture of policing, if Mr. Floyd doesn't have a knee on his neck, if he isn't dead, then the opportunists, the agitators, and none of this has an opportunity to take place. So once you have allowed disorder, don't think you can have a structured way of having people protest disorder, because what they're saying is everything is out of order. And to be quite frank with you, there's kind of a residue of an advantage to that, because what you want them to know is that if this ever occur in the future, you won't be able to control it. You won't, I don't care what laws you put in place, what stipulations you put in place, what curfews you put in place, you won't be able to control it. And so you may be more inclined to change the culture of policing, because you cannot continuously have these kind of protests, especially when they go into fires and burning cars and so on and so forth. If all the protests across the nation were extremely orderly and peaceful, then what you might have is administrators saying that should this happen again, should we have another police officer kill another black person, we know they're going to be peaceful protests. What you really want them saying is, we don't know what's going to happen. And it is that thought that things may get out of control that may help them keep their departments in control. Because sometimes you can appeal to the heart of the people, and sometimes you have to appeal to their head. Dr. King had a famous statement during the Civil Rights Movement where the people asked him, they said, are you trying to make white people love you? And he said, no, only God can change a man's heart. I'm not trying to make them love me. I'm trying to keep them from lynching me. I clearly understand that nothing I say, nothing I do will necessarily touch their heart. No matter what they say to me, what presentation they put on, I will never know if their heart is changed by their words. Even biblically, the Bible says you will know them by their deeds. So no matter what any politician, any presenter, anyone says, any of our friends say right now, we really don't know if they're being honest with us, because 400 years indicate that they've said a whole lot. They've said a whole lot, but haven't much change from that standpoint. So I'm not advocating the disorder. and the broken glass and the looting. But they have got to know that once it get out of control, you can't control it. You can't have a protest everywhere. It may be out of your power. And they need to know that. They need to know disorder leads to disorder, leads to you not being in control. So if you really want to make sure, in a capitalist country, one of the most important things is money. If you don't want Macy's glass windows broke, if you don't want things destroyed, if you don't want people hurt, then you have to work diligently to keep things in control in the first place. So I think that message is being sent by young people, and I think it's being, I think people are receiving it. Even with the president in Washington, D.C., I think what we're seeing is that people saying, wow, when things get out of order, even the president is out of order. Everybody out of order. There was a movie, and I'll shut down with this. Mike, you may remember this. I'm dating myself for the relatively older people, elderly and wise people, not old people.
Oh, Lord.
That's right.
And Justice for All was starring Al Pacino, and it was filmed here in Baltimore. And in that movie, the judge told Al Pacino, because Al Pacino was defending a judge who was a molester.
Right.
And the judge told Al Pacino, you're out of order. You can't do this. And Al Pacino said, I'm out of order. You're out of order. The whole system is out of order. The whole damn court is out of order. And so don't ask me to be in order, to do things in an orderly, structured way when you have allowed things to be put out of order. That message, as painful as it is, as uncomfortable as it is, seeing the burning and looting and all, they've got to know that if you don't get things in order in the first place, you're not going to be able to control the order. You're not going to be able to talk us down. In Baltimore, in front of City Hall here, there's a place out in front of City Hall called Protest Square. And when the Freddie Gray situation happened here, people were all over the city breaking glass and all. And then one of the politicians said, but they could have came to Protest Square. Well, why would I go to the place that you have designated for me to protest if I'm trying to show you that things are not normal?
That's right.
Why hold a protest in Protest Square? That's no longer a protest. That's a presentation, a program, a concert. And you call it so I think these kind of things, it is a perfect storm. We had the pandemic, which allowed a lot of people to be home, a lot of people to have pent up energy, a lot of people wanting to get out, a lot of people frustrated during the course of that pandemic. You had news reports about how it was impacting Black people or people of color more than it was impacting it. So you're receiving that for the first time because you can't go out. You may even be listening to the news, even if you're a young person. And you're receiving that. You're hearing about the attack via the pandemic. You're sitting at home. You've got some thinking time because you can't run everywhere. The clubs are closed. The salons are closed.
Man.
Now you have time to process this.
That's right.
Then you see this video occur. And with everything else, you've got some thinking time. Now it's quiet a little bit. The noise is down and you're hearing some things that you wouldn't receive had the pandemic not occurred. And you say, oh, hell no.
Right.
No, I know this happened before, but somehow I didn't receive it. But the reason why you're receiving it like that now is because the pandemic has got you sitting quiet, thinking about things, not running everywhere, and receiving things. So it all may be the perfect storm. And finally help us make progress. One more thing I have to, and I think that you all have been saying this too, there's been a history of these murders by police officers. There's been a history of these killings. I'm not even talking about recently. I'm talking about all the way back to the exoneration of the people who killed Emmett Till. There's been a history of that. And then after that, they do something that for those of us who are historians, they did in Vietnam. The French and the United States said what we have to do is a pacification program. So we deal with the protest. That's the first P. The second P is pacification. We give them something to satisfy them, mainly rhetoric, but we do nothing with a third P, which is some permanence. And I think what we have to make sure of, that even if you get convictions, even if they go off to prison, there have to be some changes in policy and culture. There has to be changes in how we deal with first-line supervisors. If these people are under your supervision, and this is how they act, then there are consequences for you too. Now they may get charged criminally, but you are responsible for their actions. We may have to change, we have to begin to rewrite those things. We have to have experts like everybody on here tonight, especially Mike, who is a chief and an expert in policing, have to say, well, we have to put a policy in place that says there are consequences not only for the people who participate, but for the first line supervisors. Because if I'm the head coach of a football team and the team start losing, they don't just cut players, they get a new coach. So how do I, even if I say, well, I didn't go out there, I wasn't the running back, I wasn't supposed to make the tackle, but you were supposed to have them under control. And if you don't have them under control, you got to go too. Somewhere that has to be written in policy. Then you will have people out of self-interest say that, listen, when you all go out on the street tonight, don't mess up my pension. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm not doing it because I love black people.
Right.
Maybe I'm not doing it for matters of the heart, as Dr. King said. But don't go out and now all of a sudden, the supervisor's saying, you all better act right. Now, I don't care how you feel inside. I don't care whether you like black people. I can't change your heart. But what I can say is because now they're holding me personally responsible, I will take you off the street before I have you take my pension away. Those kind of policies now are the permanent changes we have a unique opportunity to make if we can have some people focus on the protest, move past the pacification, and have other people begin to say, I want to review every policy of the police department because I think we might be able to make some permanent changes that will allow us not to be back at this disorder again, for you to call out looters. I'm agreeing with you. I want to stop looters too, but I don't want to stop them by arresting them. I want to arrest what you've done that have led to this officer putting a knee on this person's head while he called for his mother and his children.
Right. It was, I mean, and that may have been, for me, one of the things that was, you know, you're right. We're sitting inside with the pandemic. We've got time to think. But I think Trevor Noah talked at one point about the domino effect and how one to another leads to another, and you don't see it. You see, you got the pandemic, and then you had the Amy Cooper situation, which could have ended the same way, and then you have the George Floyd piece. So here you have, you know, this woman who is pretty much saying what I'm going to do, telling the black man. In all honesty, I don't see a whole lot of difference between the officer with the knee on the neck and the Amy Cooper making that call.
Hold on.
I agree.
Because somewhere there was an Amy Cooper who made that call.
Yep.
For that cop to come and put his knee on the neck. The only difference was, as I think Will Smith was that said that, you know, things aren't getting worse; they're just getting taped. You know, the things are just getting recorded, and we're starting to see it now. So we've got a whole lot of issues we got to do. We got a caller coming in, Chief.
Yes, sir. We have Phil on line one. Phil, you're live on Straight No Chaser. Phil, you're on Straight No Chaser. You there?
I can hear you.
Okay, how you doing, Phil?
I'm doing fine, Chief. How are you all doing?
We're doing fine, sir. You are live and on the air.
It's good hearing from you all. I want to say hello to Andeezy, Finbad, and your guests. I want to thank you all for doing this segment at this time tonight. It's surely time for it. I know time is precious, so let me try to go through this as fast as I can. Some of us, myself, I was there in 1968. And as a young person, and then I guess they called us radicals, we took part in the riots of 68. So I want to just say briefly, for a lot of people who don't really understand why people do the things they do during the riots, it's not always out of just wanting to be a vandal. A lot of us, we were angry. We were simply angry. And we walked past different stores. It wasn't so much that we wanted to destroy the store, but the truth was we thought to ourselves, how do they want business to just go on as normal, as if nothing has happened? So I'd say to some, before we start talking about the vandals, if you will, try to give a little bit more understanding to it. I want to say to Andeezy, you are a very smart young lady, because it's going to take your group, your time, to train those who are going out there in protest. Somebody's got to teach them what to do. I commend your parents for taking the time and letting you know what to expect when you